Well, ominous clouds closing in. In a little bit of construction mode over the next little bit. I thought I'd include you guys. Some people asked for construction stuff, and even some people asked to get involved. I think it's great. Thank you very much for every offer that has ever come through to come help out here and learn, because we've had a fair bit of experience so far in what we built, how it works, if it works. So we're building this 4th paddock in a row, and I wanted to talk about some of the initial thoughts or things that we do now and we did before, but maybe didn't fully understand exactly why in relation to the experience of having it now. So in the architecture of this particular spot, and I'll show you here, back up a bit, we've got our 3 paddocks up top there, one in the back, and our forest. So this area here has always been the last paddock to do, because a lot of this area was a little empty and we sort of kept piling stuff that we didn't really need into here. Sometimes you can use manure as a little bit of a filler, but it does break down and doesn't tamp down hard. So you kind of want to let the weather and Mother Nature sort of take over for tamping that down. Really mucky back here, as you can see. I mean, it's just wet, and all the water sort of comes down this way, and obviously this is where our drainage comes to. But the fact of the matter is we can't build on top of something that is a lot of water. I mean, just it won't stay down. It won't stay level. It'll just keep smushing out of its own way, which doesn't allow us to have a nice packed level hard ground to build on top of. So the first order of business before building onto this spot is to hopefully have it dry out over the next few days, and that means that we've got to get in drainage. So I know I'm doing another drainage video, but you know, it is requested, so what the heck. Okay, so each one of our paddocks here, to enable every horse that's in any paddock here to make sure they've got dry feet, the ground stays hard packed, it has to stay dry. Each paddock has its own level of drainage that runs across. And this cannot be an exception because it's the lowest of the 4 here. And even though the water does stop pretty much at each paddock and travels off into the middle. And if you haven't seen what we've done in the past, I have other videos. I'll try to link to them below so you can check that out as to how we figured out how to do drainage and keep things moving. You got to keep the water moving no matter what. If you live in a wet environment like we do, you gotta, you're constantly keeping water away from things. So this is one of the ways. We'll cut a ditch across. Now all of our paddocks are separated by a 6-foot pathway, which allows for space between the horses. It works well and allows us to do feedings and hanging out with the horses with enough space that you're not cramped at all. You can also get a machine in, like a quad or something, if you needed to. And so anyway, so this ditch here is going to travel downwards. So the grade is going down that way, and it's going to go down into our central drainage area, into the pond, and that carries on back to the back, which I've covered in another video. I won't talk about it now, but this ditch here is really super important because it's going to catch all the water that comes from those guys up there, anything that lands in there, all the stuff that comes from the trees and lands down here and drips down past here. And there'll be stuff that'll kind of come around the corner here. Our little alleyway also gets pretty mucky, as you can see. A lot of water. Water comes from the neighbor's place. Water just sort of gathers here. We do have our big pit. I don't know if I covered this, but I think I did. But there's a deep pit here that we dug with the excavator. And you can see there's a little bit of pipe sort of showing up there, and there's a pipe that goes that way across, and then that way onto the rest of our drainage. And so again, each area has its own drainage pipe going across. So to give you an idea of how we start off building a paddock, this is the way you start. You start by figuring out where your fence line is going to be, and then and how you're going to run drainage to stop water from getting into the paddock, so that the only water that it has to manage is its own water. The only water that the paddock has to manage is the water that falls onto it, not from other paddocks. Everything else should just get cleared out. And that's what keeps horses' hooves dry, keeps footing hard and not muddy. Here's Zeus. Hey, buddy. What are you doing? Hey, don't wreck my ditch. He's always hanging around. So once I'm done this, once I've got this ditch properly dug and the depth and the width that I need it to be, we're going to get some fabric, roll that over the top half of, so up here, and then it'll go down into the ditch here, and then continue on all the way down across the whole paddock to separate the crusher from the dirt once this is graded. But again, it's hard to grade these things. It's hard to get the land figured out nice and flat and allow it to get hard without it drying a little bit. So that's what I'm working on now. So I thought I'd fill you guys in. When I get a little bit further, I'll probably talk about something more, and hopefully that's informative. So thanks for watching.